Well, the Carney Liberals have survived a second confidence vote on the budget. The Conservatives voting against a Bloc Québécois motion to reject the budget. The budget itself is set to go to vote during the week of November 17th. And joining us now with the latest developments in federal politics, we are joined live by CTV political commentator Scott Reid. Always great to chat, Scott. I understand that you were at that meeting at the Canadian Club earlier today with the Prime Minister. Talk about what was said and how was his message received?
The message, it was very business crowd. So his message received well. He really emphasized the need for Canada to restructure, rewire the economy, and in the context of Trump and trade and perhaps the loss of that reliable partner. It was received well. It was interesting, though. You know, we were treated today here in Toronto to not just the Prime Minister, but also the Leader of the Opposition. So Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre at podiums at lunch, both of them separate settings, Prime Ministers at the Canadian Club, Pierre Poilievre at the Empire Club, and their speeches are like a real study in contrast because the Prime Minister was focused on his post-budget message, talking about major projects, another suite of announcements next week, talking about, you know, how they're going to sort of try to build growth for the future. Whereas Poilievre, as you might expect from an opposition leader, very political, very partisan, very punching hard. Prime Minister never once mentioned Pierre Poilievre's name. The same couldn't be said from Mr. Poilievre, really going straight and hard at Mark Carney.
I want to touch upon what the Prime Minister said in that clip right before we brought you in. He talked about business investment being flat over the last decade. And when you look at what's happened so far this year in the first two quarters, you've had $86 billion in capital investments, not only from Canadian investors, but foreign investors divest and flee the country. What was his message about how we attract those investors back into Canada at a time when tens of billions of dollars are fleeing the country?
Yeah, in many respects, that was almost the entire focus of his speech. And he was highlighting these things. And you think about it politically, he's trying to contrast himself with three people. He's trying to contrast himself with Pierre Poilievre, obviously. He's trying to contrast himself with Donald Trump. And he's also trying to contrast himself with Justin Trudeau. And so when he talks about, you know, that loss of capital, that loss of investment, when he talks about flat growth, he is in many ways running against Trudeau, contrasting his government with Trudeau, talking about what he needs to fix in light of the legacy that Trudeau left behind. His answer to those challenges were, that's why we've put $115 billion into productivity and competitiveness, mostly tax advantages. He must have said 4 or 5 times that Canada has a corporate tax advantage over the United States. And if you want to invest, you get a better return in Canada. So he's really appealing to the CEOs in the crowd, more or less saying, take these tax deductions, invest in your business, grow, but then also go to the United States and tell business leaders and investors there, or Europe, or Asia, about what an attractive spot Canada is. It was a real pitch on that to the investment and the business community.
Let's also talk about just how this is how the budget's being received in the House of Commons with a couple of votes already passing. What's your take on that? And I'm guessing you're pretty confident that this is going to pass.
It certainly looks like it. These first 2 votes, if this budget was in trouble, we'd have an indication of that. They're sailing through. But you can't talk about the budget votes without talking about the drama that's happening with Pierre Poilievre and his caucus. He loses 1 member on the day of the budget, crosses the floor to the Liberals. That helps the Liberals get 1 vote closer. But then a second MP resigns, says he's not even running, and now he's actually abstaining from these votes, which again makes it more or less, in effect, 1 vote closer for the government because they're no longer worried about that vote being cast against them. So that drama behind the scenes, some of the internal chaos that the Conservatives are dealing with, is helping the Prime Minister. A week ago, we were talking about, might this government see its budget fall? Might it see us plunged into an election? Now we're talking about floor crossers and Conservatives. It's an astonishing turn of events politically. You got to look. You look at the. Mark Carney was behind by 25 points in the polls. Justin Trudeau looked like he was dead and gone. Pierre Poilievre looked like he'd won this election. This budget looked like it might fail. Mark Carney is the luckiest son of a gun that's ever been in politics, I think. You know, think about the run he's on.
Well, the optics are definitely don't look good for the Conservatives with these 2 MPs, one crossing, one resigning. Lastly, I do want to get your take on how you think this budget is landing with the average Canadian out there, because we're just coming off of comments from the Prime Minister last week saying that you're going to have to sacrifice more. The Bank of Canada governor saying that you're going to have to lower your standard of living. And there's some ambitious projects, no doubt, hundreds of billions of dollars in investments over the next 5 years or so. But a lot of Canadians are wondering, how is this going to impact me today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year? And there seems to be a significant lag between that and when this country could potentially see the return on those investments way down the road, if these projects actually get off the ground and shovels in the ground.
I think you perfectly summarized the budget, if, in all honesty, Jamie. And I think that there's a political vulnerability for the government because the Prime Minister, whether he's right or not, he believes, and his speech echoed this, and your question about business investment and growth, he believes that we have to restructure our economy. A bunch of the ambitious elements of this budget are not about helping you and me, and they're not necessarily directed with specific measures to deal with immediate affordability challenges. It's trying to nudge the economy in a different direction, make it less reliant on the United States. Things that we almost certainly need to do over the long term, but these are structural changes that are going to take 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years to take effect. So where the budget is not necessarily resonating is with average Canadians who are saying, yeah, but I'm anxious right now. And I think it's going to be interesting to watch to see how it unfolds, because this is kind of a structural budget. It's like we want to change the course of our economy, but it's not a street level budget. It's not the kind of budget where you say, oh, I see how this is stuffing more money into my jeans.
CTV political commentator Scott Reid, always great to chat. Have a great weekend.
Thanks, James.